I'm still getting settled, but I'll go ahead and get us started. So my name is Daniel Summerlin, one of the librarians here at the Oberlin Regional Library. I want to thank you all for coming and being part of this event today. And of course, I want to thank our four panelists who we're going to introduce in a moment. So one of the main reasons that we wanted to do this as an in-person event as opposed to online is the opportunity it provides for everyone in this room to build connections with each other. So I would encourage you all, if you desire, to stay and linger after the program, get to know each other. We've got lots of library books on either side of the room that you can read and take home with you. We just ask that you do eventually bring them back. Have some questions about that. As well as over on the table here, we've got more information about the North Carolina African American Heritage Commission, as well as Carmen's organization, Research and Resource. I would also like to encourage anyone who is inspired to research or preserve their own family and community history to connect with our Olivia Rainey Local History Library. Our archivist, Hannah Cox, and her staff not only provide excellent services on site, but if you need help preserving your own materials, they do make house calls. So please do take a brochure, which has their address and contact information on it. You can find it on the table right over there. Speaking of historic events, I definitely want to plug the Richard B. Harrison Community Library's upcoming 90th birthday celebrations. They will be having a big celebration event on November 9th, which is exactly 2 weeks from today, at the Tarboro Road Community Center. They're also going to have many other events at the library throughout the month, so you can grab a schedule, again on the table over there, with all the details about what they've got coming up. Lots of cool stuff happening there. So to say, just give you a quick idea of what our format's going to be today. We are going to have the opportunity for you to ask our panelists questions. That's going to be towards the end of the program. So you've got a couple ways to do that. We will, can pass the mic around. You can just stand up and ask your question. Or if you prefer to write it down, we've got little slips of paper there and some pens. Feel free to, at any point, if something occurs to you, write something down. And there's a little plastic box there. Just drop your question in, and we can hand that to our panelists as well to read and answer. So I'm going to turn it over now to our moderator, Natalie Rodriguez. She is the Associate Director of the North Carolina African American Heritage Commission. She is a North Carolina native, raised in Durham, with roots in Eastern North Carolina and Puerto Rico. She is a graduate of North Carolina Central University and NC State, where she earned her master's in public history. For 5 years, Natalie was the tour coordinator at the North Carolina State Capitol and Executive Mansion. She is a contributing researcher for the State Capitol's website, From Naming to Knowing, which I would encourage you all to go seek out. Natalie uses public history as a tool to promote, protect, and preserve North Carolina history for all people. So please give her and all our panelists a warm welcome.
Thank you for that warm welcome today. Can everyone hear me at the moment? Yes. Perfect. Welcome again. My name is Natalie Rodriguez. I actually have my own introduction plan, so I can cut through that. That's wonderful. Did a wonderful job, so thank you so much. I'm really honored to be in this space today. I was born in Raleigh, raised in Durham, so don't judge. But I'm back in Raleigh now, and I live here in Southeast Raleigh, so I'm really happy to be in this space. A space where me and my daughter can come, feel safe, and just be here and do research and learn. So once again, thank you all. So today, welcome everyone to the panel, Everyday People Enduring Voices, Safeguarding Black History in Communities Across North Carolina. Today, I get the pleasure of introducing our panelists today, Ms. Carmen, Ms. Lydia, and Khadija. And today we're going to be focusing on Amplifying Black North Carolinian Legacies Through Documentary and Filmmaking, Activism, Writing, and Public History. And with that, like we said before, you'll get a chance to ask questions at the end of the panel today. We want to be sure that you all are able to engage with the panelists, so that is something that's really important to us today. So I'm going to do my best to keep us moving forward through with our wonderful panelists, though I will say our planning meetings were so fun because I just got to engage with these ladies and talk forever. But with that, we do have time constraints today, so with that, I can skip over myself. I don't have to introduce myself again, but I will first start off with introducing Miss Carmen. So Miss Carmen is an author, and her book is Historic Black Neighborhoods of Raleigh, which is on the table back there, so you can learn a little bit more as well. And with that, it chronicles Wake County's Black citizens in historic neighborhoods. She also used to work for the state. She retired from the General Assembly as a clerk, and she has a background in education and community history. So I'm so excited that you're with us today, and each one of our panelists will tell us a little bit more, but I'm just going to do a brief introduction to each one of these ladies before we get started, so you know each one of their focuses today. All right, so today we also have Miss Lydia at the end. She is a JD candidate and has a background in entrepreneurship, storytelling, and advocacy. She does documentary filmmaking, and she has a small business focused on law and community representation. So thank you again for being with us today. And finally, we have Ms. Khadija. She is from the North Carolina State Freedom Park, which is down here in Raleigh. It is the one and only space dedicated to African American voices here in the Capitol. So that is stewarded by the Department of Natural and Cultural Resources, and the division that stewards that site is the North Carolina African American Heritage Commission. And with that, I myself also serve with the North Carolina African American Heritage Commission as the Associate Director. So really pleased to be with you all today, and I have some wonderful colleagues who will be speaking briefly about their advocacy and how they work towards preserving Black African American stories all across the state here in North Carolina. So, ladies, we're going to start with our first question. Let's begin by introducing yourselves, because I know I talked briefly about who you are, but you have more about that. And could you each briefly share your role and how your work connects to the themes of amplifying everyday Black voices and safeguarding Black history in North Carolina? And I can repeat that if you want. Does anyone want to start?
So hi, my name is Khadija McNair. I am the Freedom Park Manager, and as Natalie mentioned, Freedom Park is a fairly new site in downtown Raleigh. It's only about 2 years old. It is a monument that was created in response to not having another monument on the Capitol grounds that really celebrates or acknowledges the rights of African Americans, the activism of African Americans contributing to all the freedoms we have here today in North Carolina. So that's what I do currently. I do that work under the African American Heritage Commission for the state and the Department of Natural and Cultural Resources. So I've been with Freedom Park for, I think, going on 2 years now, but my work is centered in public history, and particularly public history for African Americans in North Carolina. So I have my bachelor's and master's in history from NCCU. Happy homecoming. And I am just really energized and passionate about being a public historian and sharing these stories in historic sites and museums. When I was in school, people always asked me, are you going to be a professor? Are you going to teach? And yeah, but I didn't want to teach in a classroom. I know the classroom was not the space for me. And so I've done this work at a couple different sites, mostly within the state system. So I've worked at the Charlotte Hawkins Brown Museum in Sedalia, North Carolina. I've also worked for Duke Homestead State Historic Site in Durham. But I spent most of my time before being at Freedom Park at Stagville State Historic Site. which is a site of slavery, one of the largest plantations in North Carolina. And today that is a historic site that only centers on the voices of enslaved people. So I'm really proud to have worked there for 4 years and have brought that expertise into Freedom Park.
Hi, I'm Carmen Cauthen. I'm a Raleigh native. Spent way too much time in this part of the city growing up. I just realized that I was a public historian. I was just retired for a long time. And so wrote a book about the historic Black neighborhoods of Raleigh because I stumbled on the information and was then asked to write it. It has been quite a journey to learn so much more about the city that I was born in, grew up in. You know, when you're born somewhere, you kind of think you know it all. But there's so much that we don't know about what Black people did in Raleigh and how they built the city, how they grew the city. A lot of us don't know that at one point the population in Raleigh was half Black and half white, and that was in the 1890s. So I am, Natalie said something about being an educator. I ran from being a teacher. My mother, my aunts, and my uncles were all teachers, and I was like, I'm not doing that. I was wrong. It must be in the genes. So that's kind of who I am and what I do now, and I'm continuing to write. Have another couple of books that I'm working on that should have been out by now. One, if you have seen any of the information over there, is about 440 women from Raleigh, North Carolina since the 1800s. It will be called Woman of Substance, and we hosted a dinner honoring them earlier this year because Black women just don't get their due, and I wanted to be sure that they did. And in this culture today, it is important to write down what you know. It's also important to write down what you know about your family history. And so that I do teach, and I do help folks put their family histories together, and I'll talk about that a little bit more.
Hello, everybody. My name is Lydia Elrod. I'm realizing the thing that the three of us, besides other things, but the one thing I'm realizing that all three of us have in common is that we've run away from education and being teachers. Is in my family. All my mom, my aunts, everybody's a teacher. So I'm taking a different route. I'll probably end up there one day. But it's great to see your faces here this afternoon. Not morning, is it? Afternoon. I am, as Natalie said, a law student at the moment. I'm also a graduate of NC State, where I finished my master's in English. So I have a background in English, writing, and storytelling. Today I consider myself a storyteller. I think the reason that I'm pursuing the law degree is to move from being a storyteller to being a story changer. So that's where I see myself today and what I'm learning and practicing for. So I got my start creating my master's thesis, which ended up being a documentary film called Cherrytown Road. It won the Best Capstone Award for the College of Humanities at NC State. That was a small little documentary. I had no clue what I was doing, but I really wanted to record my family history, and told that story and ended up winning that award. And it's followed me to this day. It's not technically the most sound film in the world, but it's something that I think a lot of people resonate with, and something that I hope to be able to speak to today in terms of how we can all sort of preserve our history and realize that it will resonate with more people than we think it will. So I'm still working with the Language and Life Project at NC State. That program has created films like Talking Black in America. It's on PBS, as well as some other films that have gone on to win Emmy Awards. I haven't been a part of those, but hope to be one day. So again, great to see you all. Again, hope to be able to speak to storytelling and help share my experience and maybe inspire some of you, and you all can inspire me and us as well.
Ooh, I had chills listening to y'all, and I just wanted to jump in and start talking. I was like, this is not about you. So one thing I think we can add, another person we can add to the list that ran from kind of education, but not, was myself too. Because when I was at Central, I originally thought I wanted to be an educator in social studies, and I just really was passionate about teaching kids what I didn't learn about in school. I grew up here in North Carolina, so in Durham, and I thought I had a pretty a diverse education. And then I got to my undergrad program, and I just started at Central, and I started learning about things I didn't know about Durham growing up in Durham. And I was like, what is this? Why did I not know about a lot of this amazing history here in Durham, but not in Durham, just in Raleigh, in Wilmington, in Asheville. Why was this history not told to me, especially pertaining to African Americans? So I did an internship with National Park Service, and that was back in 2017 and 18, and I had the privilege to work at, Fort McHenry and the Mary McLeod Bethune Council House. And that's when I learned I wanted to go into museums, I wanted to be a public historian, and then I went to state and I got my master's so I could do this work. But in that sense, I've been able to meet a lot of great people doing this work in so many different ways, in different places, and it's really, we have a wonderful panel of ladies who are showing us different ways that this preservation effort, this history can be preserved, especially for African Americans across North Carolina. So this leads me to my second question. All right, ladies, we're gonna explore historical context, all right? Exploring how does the legacy of everyday Black community members shape your current approach to advocacy, storytelling, and historical interpretation? I'll say that again. How does the legacy of everyday Black community members shape your current approach to advocacy, storytelling, and historical interpretation? Or
So I grew up in a Black, not necessarily in a Black neighborhood, when I was a kid in a Black neighborhood, but we moved to a white neighborhood in 1969. And I was alone. The only thing that kept me from feeling alone all the time was family and family history. And when my mom and her sisters would get together and start telling those stories, you know the stories. The ones that when you're a kid, you're like, okay, we're going to go play because we don't want to hear those. But as you get older, you recognize the importance of what they said because that's the only record you've got. I was fortunate on my mom's side of the family that their family had not, her mom's side of the family had not been enslaved. So they had papers and records and documents where they had written their family history. On my grandfather's side, on my mom's side, his family had been enslaved, but they had come out of slavery, and his father had purchased, eventually, a couple of 100 acres of land down east in North Carolina. And so they were proud of those things, and they would share them, and they would tell them. My dad's family, I knew my grandmother's family because we would go to Greenville to visit, but they were poor and her sister was sick. So we didn't get to go in the house, so I don't really ever remember seeing them. And then his father's family was from Edgecombe County as well. He was an only child, and he didn't talk about his family. So as I got older, I recognized that there's so much that we don't know. And when I started writing this book, I recognized that the legacy of our country is that we only tell the history from the white men who had money's point of view. Well, it means everybody else needs to write down what they know, because it's too easy to go, well, that didn't happen or that didn't happen. You know it happened. We have what we still should know as griots in our communities. They tell the stories. They live the stories. I can point to some of them here in this room, and you all know some yourself. And sometimes they don't want to tell the stories. There are folks that I work with that I try to get to tell their stories, and they go, it's too painful. But the rest of us won't know all of that pain if it's not shared. So my job is to encourage people to tell the stories. Whatever part you remember, because nobody knows all of it. but whatever part you remember, and whatever part, I have some friends here who are genealogists, and some of them fight with me on this. But some people are afraid of doing the genealogy because they automatically think there's going to be this wall I'm going to hit, so there's no need of me starting at all. Well, start where you are. Start with what you know. If you can get 16 names back, 16 grandparents back, that's an amazing thing in the Black community. But write down the pieces that you know. And if you don't have the genealogy, take your memories. You've got memories of things that happened in your family. That's legacy. And we built this country. And so we need to be sure that the record of what we did is written down, because every piece of it is important. It's a part of the puzzle. It's not a part, we talk about a melting pot. Well, have you ever melted crayons? Do you know what they look like when they melt? They do not become one blob, one color. They become a blob, but they're colors that are all mixed in and out. And so that's our piece of history and our piece of legacy. And that's the piece that is important for me to do, is make sure that you are writing down your piece.
I'll go off of some of the things that Carmen has said, because we are in a moment in history where history is being erased and revised every single day, but our memories are still there and they still last, whether or not they're published in the history books. And so for me, a lot of the work that I did on my documentary was from memory, just straight from memory, the stories I heard as a child. And so the opening scene of the documentary is my mom speaking about how she remembers as a little girl the KKK coming and burning a cross in front of her neighborhood, and the men in the neighborhood grabbing their shotguns and going out and standing in front of the neighborhood and saying that this will not be tolerated here. And that's something I fear in the next, I would say 5-10 years, but it might be 2. In the next few years that we might not be able to read about anymore in a history book. But it's recorded in a documentary. You all can grab a recorder and put it in front of your mom, your grandma, your aunts, whoever, and have them tell that history, and it will be there forever. There are ways, technology is an incredible way that we can preserve things for a very, very long time. And so, like Carmen's saying here, legacy is, I think, held in memory. And it's those memories that we all have and share that we can record and keep for a lifetime, many lifetimes.
I think one thing that really sat with me hearing both of you speak was Natalie and I both doing this work under the state government system. And the restrictions and challenges that comes with that, but I also see the power in us being there and our colleagues being there. We work for the African American Heritage Commission. We're very proud to do this work, but we do see the threats to our work. And so I am really glad that you encourage everyone here to record your stories, to keep your stories, to hold on to your stories. I would also encourage you on another layer of that is to connect with some of the individuals at these spaces around you, at historic sites and museums around you. I will say one of the most powerful experiences, and really what drives my work even more today, is my experience at Stagville, a state historic site under the state umbrella, but doing this work alongside descendants of that site, and understanding the wanting to do things in my role as an interpreter at this site that sometimes leadership didn't always agree with or allow us to do, but always finding a loophole, always finding a way around sometimes to get it done, and then being able to report back and say, well, hey, we couldn't do it this way, but we did it that way, and that's okay with everybody. So I really want us to record these stories, to hold on to them in our personal and private collections, but also make sure we're supporting folks who are in some positions who are trying to do this work and push back to a lot of these challenges that we're having.
Thank you. you ladies for that. I really appreciate that. And yes, I definitely encourage people to be sure you're recording these stories, these histories. Yes, because, I mean, at the Capitol when I was there, we did the Digital Humanities Project from Naming to Knowing and covering slavery at the North Carolina State Capitol. A lot of that was based off community voices, community stories, descendants telling us about their ancestors. And sometimes, you know, we weren't able to connect with descendants, but we say this work is ongoing. It never ends. We are continually trying to be sure that we're preserving these stories, and then we're putting the spaces for them to be read about, told. And so I think that's so important. So thank you, ladies, for the work you're doing. So this kind of leads me to my next question, which I think some of you already touched on, but maybe you can go a little deeper. Safeguarding Black history. Kind of, what does that look like? And I believe some y'all talked about it a little bit, but my question to you ladies is, what are some key challenges you face in preserving, documenting, and sharing these histories of everyday Black North Carolinians? Share a challenge maybe recently or in the past.
I would say, in my experience, and the thing that pops out immediately, being a public historian in historic site spaces, you know, we're giving tours constantly, talking to, you know, anyone who comes up about the history of our site. And so the challenge that we almost always face is encountering visitors who are unhappy with the stories we're telling, or who don't understand, or, you know, get angry. And early in my career, I took a lot of that very personally. I would be in these spaces talking about the history of slavery, and you know, folks would get mad. Well, you know, that's not how it was, or weren't they good enslavers, or I don't know why people are still talking about this today. I would get responses like that, and I would get very personally affected, upset, sad. I would not be confrontational, walk away. And it took me learning that history is emotional. We should feel something when we tell these stories. If you feel nothing, that's not okay. You should feel anger, sad, happy, something when you hear these stories. So understanding that helped me to take my personal feelings out of it. Also understanding that, like someone touched on earlier, memory is a large part of who we are. How we remember the past, how we understand the past, informs a lot about who we are as people. And so when I get those harsh interactions of folks being angry, I now understand that, oh, you're not angry at me. You're angry at, I'm confronting a lie that you understand, or a lie that you hold on to. So I felt better about, okay, well, let me help you do this. Let me be a mediator to get you to understand that this is not, you know, what you learned in school when you were young is not what this actually was. So those are some challenges I faced and how I kind of pushed through them. One thing I'm exploring currently is grief. Also, as you think about memory and people having anger or really emotional reactions to their memories being countered, I also understand that as some grief. They're experiencing kind of a sadness about the memories they understand being wrong, or not being how we understand that history currently. So I've been studying grief and how to better be that mediator as folks are dealing with that transition.
One of the, well, let me put it this way. A lot of my experience with the process came from when I worked at the General Assembly, being the only Black person in the room, and hearing people talk in a room that was wide open. We weren't fortunate enough to have separate offices in the space where I was. And to hear people talk about Black people behind my back, or literally in front of me, but you know, it was on the other side of that piece of wall that helped divide the room. And recognizing that there was a time and a place for me to counteract what they said. There was a time for me to choose the battle, and to make sure that when I chose the battle, it was a battle I could win. That carried forth into writing this book. When I was looking for information, I don't know how many of you are familiar with a book that was commissioned by the Raleigh Historic Districts Commission called Culture Town. It is not on the market today. You might find a copy of it somewhere. But it was a book written about the architecture in the Black communities. It wasn't written about the people in the Black communities in Raleigh, although they interviewed 74 elders, oral history interviews. And my parents had a copy of that book, and so when they passed, I got it. And I thought, well, you know, I'm in the digital age. I'll just go online and find these interviews. Found 4 out of 74. And they were different lengths, but Clarence Leitner's, you know, he was our one and only Black mayor in 1973-74. His interview was 47 pages long. The other interviews I found were in the 30-page region. And I thought, so where are they? And then I found that they were at Richard B. Harrison Library. And so I went over there, and they weren't there. And I reached out to the folks at eventually I ended up at the City Museum, and I found that they had the recorded, some of you are too young to know about this, but they were recorded on cassette tapes. And so there were pictures of the cassette tapes on the website, and you could listen to them. But there were supposed to be these written or typed up documents. So I reached out to a friend, and she had been a librarian. She was a retired librarian at that point. And I said, how do we find these? It took her almost 6 months to find these interviews. And they were in the basement of the museum. And they didn't have a copy machine. And they weren't digitized. And so the ones I couldn't, I'm old school and I'm sneaky. So I turned on Otter.ai, which is a transcription, and I played each tape and let it record each tape because that's how bad I wanted the information. And I would go in the kitchen and do something else, and then when it stopped, I'd go, you know, for all of those interviews, and most of them were A and B sides of a cassette tape, and sometimes more than one. So I have all of them, all those recordings, because some of them now are off the website because they have to follow a process. When you do an oral history interview, you get permission, written permission from the person who gives you the interview to begin with. After you transcribe it, you're supposed to go back and have them to check it and see if they want to make any corrections. That's a whole nother story. But if they don't sign that piece of paper, then you're not technically allowed to use it. And they've gone back now, and some people didn't sign that second piece of paper, so they pulled some of those. But I got them. And so a lot of the descriptions of the communities that I wrote about came from the descriptions that people put in their oral histories. They talked about the trees, the fruit that grew, the people who were on the streets. I was able to put charts together that said, these were the businesses. Some people went through every block of every street in their community and listed out. But just think, if I hadn't decided to reach out, or if I hadn't had a connection, I wouldn't have been able to put the depth in the book. So it's not just what has been erased, it's what we don't know is out there. Because there are other things out there. I found somebody's oral history in Ohio who ran the Carolinian newspaper here. His family knew that he had done the interview, but they had no idea where it was. And so I was able to share that with them. So we've got some history out there, but we gotta go find it. So that's why we need to make sure that our pieces are done. And if you want to connect with someone after you pull your pieces together and ask them if they will archive it for you, do that. And then make sure that your family knows where it is. They have a copy, but they also know where the public version of it is. So those are just a few of the things that I have run into. There are others, but
This is a good transition point to what I'm thinking about here, which is just the technological aspect of storage. So that, it's a very technical thing here, but it is so important to know that you have enough storage and to know that say if you're putting it on a hard drive, your hard drive's not gonna fail, or you have your hard drive backed up. So keep that in mind, especially if you are working on video related projects, hundreds and hundreds of gigabytes worth of footage, for example, needs to be archived in a place that you know it's gonna stay archived. It costs money to archive things on the internet, and that can be a hefty bill. Again, things that are physical, like on hard drives and things like that, can get lost. So anytime you're doing work like this, back up. I have lost 2 hard drives in my lifetime. It has been devastating. And I've been able to recover them, but that costs thousands of dollars to do as well. So just keep that in mind from a very practical aspect. I think another challenge that I've faced in doing this work is realizing that you can't please everybody. You're just not gonna be able to do it like Khadijah's saying here. I recently worked on a project in a neighboring county, won't name the county, but it's a very divided county. Half of it has a large Black and brown population, the other half has a wealthy white population. I was tasked with putting together a documentary that told the story of the county, which is a huge task in and of itself, but reconciling both versions of their histories was extremely challenging. And I got, in our first showing, chewed up and spit out as I received feedback for what some folks didn't feel like was their version of history. And that happens. And so you do know that you can't please everybody. But when you're doing a private project, say it's for yourself, not for like the government or an entity or something, choose who your audience is and choose to speak to them and stick to that. Tell the story from their perspective and do it justice. Because there's always going to be another version of that history, and those things can coexist. And if somebody wants to look at them and put them side by side and make a determination about what they believe based on that, they can do that. But don't be afraid to tell a story that's relevant to you and your people and where you come from. I think that's a huge point to make here.
Thank you, ladies, for that. That's amazing. And when I say be sure that your data is somewhere safe, please do. Even with the commission, we've worked with contractors and things. You have things through Google, and then access, something happens, files are deleted. Years of research gone, and thankfully, in some cases, we've been able to get that, but right now we're in the process of transferring our data to a more safe and secure place so that the research that our commission has done can be preserved. And I also encourage you to visit your local state historic sites, your not even private house museums. Learn about your community, support them right now. They need the support, especially African American sites. A lot of sites are losing funding federally. So being in those spaces, advocating for those stories helps those sites so much. And then too, to preserving those stories, when you go into your libraries and your archives, and you see something that deals with African Americans, you see that the data does not reflect that, go to the archivist and tell them, hey, I see that there's some records of enslaved people here. Because when I did the project with the Capitol, a lot of the records we came across with finding out that the enslaved laborers were not tagged and said that they were human beings or enslaved people, it said property, right? So think about different ways you're doing this research. And a lot of these ladies, I think, have addressed that, and then there's challenges that come with that too. But with that, thank you ladies for answering our big questions for today. Get the audience thinking, and now we want to open it up for some questions from you all. So we earlier stated that if you had some written down questions, you could put them over there in the container, excuse me, and then Daniel could read off some. But if you would like to kind of ask the panelists yourself, I can come and bring the mic. So if anyone's ready, and then raise your hand.
You know that there is, I think it's a $30 or $40 million grant between Wake County and the city. It's going going out to an RFP, I did ask Mr. Evan Raleigh, with this going out, you can do any kind of project, any kind of project. What I was thinking about is for all of the historical organizations coming together and giving it a shot. Because if you don't apply, how will you know? And funding to do African American work, there really, really is none available. So what I'm interested in doing is bringing all these groups together to take a stab at that, because I think it's worth it. If you don't try, you won't get it. And I know the time is really, really pressing on, but I would like to set up a meeting to meet with you afterwards to form this meeting, and we get with Evan Raleigh ASAP to talk about it's 30 million to 40 million, but it's split between the county and the city. And we come together to put in this bigger application. So that means all the groups get some of the money, and we must form one collaboration to do this. What this means, we all have to work together, no fussing now. And we all gotta sit down and talk about the do's and the don'ts, and at the end of the day, can we all come together to go after this money? I think we should apply for 10 million. That's my thinking. That's mine. I like that too. So what I'm saying is that after this meeting, let us come together. I'll set up the meeting with Evan Raleigh. Let's give this a go.
I think I saw this on the commercial video.
Hi everybody, my name is Ty Kerry Brooks. I'm a financial advisor in the area. Recently just relocated from New York back to North Carolina after 20 years. I'm not originally from Wake County, I'm originally from Nash County, so I hear a lot of what y'all are going through. Y'all know we go through Nash County as well. One of my main questions, this could be for the crowd and the panelists, is as someone who's new, who's looking to create spaces, how should I best go about it? Creating spaces and creating resources. Because you guys know, our generations, we're not gonna rely on the government at all. We know we can't rely on them at all. A lot of these older generations do rely on them, but my goal is to figure out how to drive the gap between young professionals like myself who are making money, to then help them understand the importance of creating resources for lower income families and families that are underserved. So how do we create those spaces?
I don't know. What I would say though, one of the things, like Octavia just said, somebody, and I'm a community activist on top of that. So somebody needs to know what's going on in the community. Like she stays on Raleigh and Wake County's government like white on rice. And she knows what money's coming through and what's not. And she's willing to tell it. See, that's been one of the issues for us in our community, is that people know stuff and they don't tell it if they know it. And so we need to learn how to collaborate. We need to collaborate not just one generation.
Right.
We've got to collaborate with all 5 generations that are out there. It might be more now, but we've got to collaborate because the elders need to share what they know. The elder women and the elder men, because they didn't always talk to each other. We need to do the same thing with the younger generations. There's a person in the back of the room who writes about history, like families, like nobody's business. So talk to Desi Campbell. Desi, raise your hand. Yes, I know you're not from Wake County, but you know how to do this. I'm not even gonna ask him how many cousins he has, because it's probably in the 20 or 30,000 range somewhere. If your families are collecting for a holiday, you know, we've got Thanksgiving and Christmas coming up and Kwanzaa, tell them beforehand. We're gonna pull out a tape recorder off of our phones and we're gonna start recording some of our family history. And then if you've got friends, tell them to do the same thing. when I wanted to talk about what my parents needed to do for when they died, I said, here's the agenda, we're gonna talk about it during that period of time we're home. And it was not the easiest conversation, and I wasn't telling them what they need to do to send to me, to give to me. I was telling them what they needed to do to preserve their assets so they wouldn't go to the government. And then it was on them to take care of it. But we need to be willing to have those conversations while we're digesting the turkey, while we're not watching the football game. We need to do the things that are important for us and our people. And we have to do it starting at home. And then we take our friend groups and we say, this is what I'm working on. You need to work on this too. And then let's get together. Let's put this piece together. We can make money off of it. We can make sure it's shared so that the generations coming behind us know the truth. Because we see every day, okay, you don't want us to talk about enslavement? Fine. That is not the only thing that happened to black people. We didn't just show up in here in 1619. Some of us been here. Some of us are part of indigenous tribes. And someone has been helping to work on my genealogy that I didn't ask him to do, but he does it anyway. He's gone back and started to try to identify the Indian tribe that really is no longer in existence for my family. And so then he said, you know, you have to go back to the tribe to get the information, because all of my family members who have done DNA, it shows up like 2%. But we know that there were Indians who would show up at things with our elders that were part of the family, but we were young and we didn't care. So, you know, we need to go and spend some of our time looking up the information, and then we need to tell it. Like this room is full today, we need to fill up some other rooms. And one of the ways I'm trying to help people do is teach them how to write it from their memories. So if you have not picked up a worksheet or a sheet over there, I'm doing 3 webinars between now and December 11th that are free to teach you how to start writing your family history from your memories. Now, I still got bills to pay, so by January, the programs will cost money, but we gotta start. We've got to start, and everybody's got some stories.
Creating spaces, it starts just like this right here. Obviously, a big thank you to the Oberlin Regional Library for doing this work and being bold enough to put this on. That's where it starts. I've been able to be a panelist here, I think maybe 1 or 2 other times, and I've sat in the audience before, and I have seen the same faces show up to each of these events. So you continue to come to these things, you're gonna see people who are also passionate about that work, and you can continue connecting with them that way as well. You know, when I was, again, going back to the documentary that I created, the church was a big resource for me as well. So keeping that in mind, that there are these smaller institutions that hold a lot of the records from the community. I was able to find my family's titles to the land that they own at the church. You know, so you know, getting into those small community institutions that are not necessarily governed by the large governmental entities and things like that. That's a great way to start sort of working in the underground and working your way up to something really substantial. And I'd also say, again, like I've said before, don't be afraid to record these stories. And even if you don't think that they're necessarily valuable, I promise you that they are. When I made that documentary, I was like, what in the world is gonna happen with this? The audio is staticky and there's, you know, the camera's shaky and things like that. But it's on YouTube now. I think it's at like 80,000 views. I have no clue how that happened. And the comments are people just like us going, oh, I remember my grandma used to tell me that story too. Or, you know, we used to eat this. You know, so you can build online communities and digital communities as well, just by sharing.
One other thing I want to say really quick. There are organizations that are already out there that are looking for younger folk. One of them is AHDS, Afro-American Historical and Genealogical Society. It is a international organization that has chapters. And there are 4 chapters in the state of North Carolina. There's one that is the Triangle chapter. We have the president of the Triangle chapter right here in the front row, and several members of the organization here. There is also the Association of Black Historians. That's not what it's called, but y'all know, I'm sure. ASALH, I think. So if you are
North Carolina Association of Black Storytellers.
North Carolina Association of Black Storytellers, in case you didn't hear that. So there are some already organized associations and organizations. And I will say, as a baby elder, because that's as far as I'm going with that right now. Baby elders recognize that we need some younger folk in some of these organizations to do some of the work, especially some of the technological work, because I love ChatGPT, but everybody doesn't, and they aren't all willing to learn how to use these things for their, for the ways that they make life easier when you are searching for information. And some of us are just scared of it. I was when I first heard about it. But we need folks who are willing to learn and teach how to do those things to teach some of the rest of us.
Thank you. A couple of questions. I wanted to find out if anybody is trying to get the records from the old, is it Irvin Swain printer? I mean, they have the story of our lives. I remember, I grew up in Wake Forest and went to a little school there, Du Bois. And the photographer, what's his name? J.D. J.D. Hinton would take the prom pictures and all of the things, and we had a little paper they call a gazetteer, and it would print things like poems that the kids wrote, and we've been able to retrieve a few copies of those. But I know that the black photographers and the black printing presses here in town have years of historical information on all of us, and I just wonder if anybody, if the Carolinian or anyone's doing that.
Well, I do know that with the Carolinian, you have to go through their archive to really find that, and some of that is housed out on, what is it, Carrot Drive, that one, but, and then they have stacks of paper going up to the ceiling. And some of it is housed in the old Richardson B. Harris library books that they used to have. I don't know whether they still have them now, but that was an excellent resource, because Wanda used to always tell me, where is your gloves? And I would say, who's Wanda? And she would go get those gloves because the books were so old. And Wanda really explained it to me. So I became better at that. But you are right, they are. But I don't know where the books are at that was at the library. I don't know.
Well, a lot of the Carolinian is digitized now, so you all can actually sit in your bed and go online and go to Digital North Carolina and pull up Carolinian. You can pull up yearbooks as well from across the state here in Wake County. But I always tell folks, the first place you need to look is home. Go home. See what's at home. You have probably access to marriage certificates, divorce decrees, old obituaries, prom pictures, all of those things. If you start at home and then find the elders in your family and ask them, who is this? Why did this happen? Start recording those stories. Those stories are important. And the other thing, I'm on my soapbox now, I'm sorry. Format. All right, technology changes so rapidly that you need to make sure that you are saving your stories in different formats. Think of all those I think 8-track, when you think music, you know? Nobody has an 8-track player anymore, so you can't play the 8-tracks. So think of that as far as cassette tapes or the 8mm films that your parents took of you when you were in your Easter finery. Those types of things you can send away now and get the format changed so that you can save those things. Let's see, church records. I love church records. Church records and those from the funeral parlors.
Right.
They have amazing records as well. So when you start out looking for these family things, start close to home. Start talking to your grandmother, your great aunt. Talk to them while you can. And then folks say, well, I don't know what to ask them. Well, just sort of think back. Thanksgiving's coming. So ask about recipes. That's first thing. Who made the macaroni and cheese and why? Whose macaroni and cheese you won't eat? You know, start there. Those are great stories to tell.
And you know what, one also.
I'm done.
I do want to be aware of time. Okay, the thing is that is, for the past 15 years, and one of the things that I really preach to churches about, don't ever throw away your obituary.
Nope.
Obituary.
He's got thousands that
Yeah, obituaries.
Desi Campbell.
Yeah, obituaries tell stories. If you ever want to know a story, read those obituaries. They really tell the story. So churches should never ever throw away their obituaries, but they tell a story that nobody else can tell. And when you read some of those obituaries, because I read obituaries back to 1929, I'm like, good God, I wasn't even thought about. But it was old, but it really gave me a glimpse of the neighborhood, was before my time.
So, to answer Betty's question though, Urban Swain Press's records are at UNC. They donated them. I don't know how well they're cataloged there, but they are there.
Okay.
Yeah, and digital NC I heard was referenced. It's a lot of them have been archived there. I know again digital accessibility is not for all, but that's a great place. I know someone said directories, yearbooks. I've done family genealogy. I found a lot of my family's yearbooks. So it's funny because I put them in the family tree. They're like, why do you have that picture of me? Because I found it. They're like, where online? But I'm gonna try to take some questions over here. I know I saw a hand raised.
I can't leave here without saying this, but North Carolina consists of 100 counties, and each county has a probate office. Wills and estates. I worked for the clerk of court's office for 41.5 years, and I noticed a lot of people were coming in and getting their ancestry through the wills and estates, looking at the letters of administration, letters of testamentary, and although that information is heirs, it's also included death certificates, birth certificates, if you're lucky with looking up the estate files. And you can get a lot of information of who the heirs are just by looking at the application. And a lot of times, I was born in Brooklyn, let me get off the subject, I was born in Brooklyn, New York, but if I was to die here in North Carolina, my death certificate would say Brooklyn, New York. So you can get your information by just pulling up the estate file.
Thank you for that valuable resource. That is 100% correct. And a lot of my research is done by pulling up probate records. So thank you. All right. Yeah, I'm getting my steps in today.
So I just wanted to speak to the brother that said he's new, come back to the area. There are a lot of centers around the state that are called movement centers. And they're for communities that are involved in struggles. It might be housing, it might be immigrant rights, it might be black discrimination, and workers' rights. but they also house a lot of the history of neighborhoods and a lot of the history of struggles that have taken place in this area. We have one in called the Fruit of Labor World Cultural Center on Capitol Boulevard, and we have an archives that has the history of struggles that have gone on throughout communities in this area, in the eastern part of the state, the central part of the state, whether it be workers' rights, whether it be community struggle against environmental justice, against water contamination, that are housed in our archives. And what these movement centers do, our goal is to have our archives is open to the community. So you don't have to go to UNC Chapel Hill, you don't have to go get permission from anybody. You come to the center and you can go in there and look at those archives, look at those records and do research. We're not gonna leave it to any of the universities. It's gonna stay a community-based archives. And that's what a lot of these community centers are doing. I know in your area, there's the Abner Berry Freedom Library. And it's also called Adam Berry Freedom Library and the Communiversity, which I guess administers or owns that space there. And it's community people can come and check out, all this history. There are newspapers, there are videos, there are cassette tapes, there are songs, music that's been recorded about struggles that have gone on. So all of those, so across the state, there are movement centers like that. So just wanted to let you know that.
Excuse me, what's the name of the center on Capitol?
It's the Fruit of Labor World Cultural Center, 4200 Lake Ridge Drive.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we have a archive of all the struggles that have taken place in communities.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that resources, and that's why we're here together, to share resources, provide feedback. We have time for another question.
Very briefly, I want to say that it's also important to save documents if you have them. And if you can afford to get acid-free boxes to store paper in because it deteriorates. But people have newspaper clippings, church programs, all that kind of thing. A lot of our elders hoard these things and we tell them to throw them away. Just take a look at what you is in your basement in a box, is in your attic in a box. Those documents are important, and if we don't save them, especially from newspapers, things that have gone out of business. And I had another point, but I can't remember what it was.
We got time.
I just want to say that this is like manna from heaven for people in this room. I don't know if you feel that way, but I'm so concerned with our history. To know that this work is being done here. I'm not from here. So to know that this is being done here is wonderful, and I just encourage everybody to dig deep and pull together.
This is community work, and we wouldn't be here without the community. I believe that, if we don't have these conversations and push forward, we're gonna come to a standstill, and a lot of our voices and stories are gonna fall to the wayside. So I'm happy that we're in this room and we're continuing this conversation. We do have time for another question. Does anyone have a question?
Hi, it's not really a question, it's more of a statement. I'm a local artist in the area from Art Space, and I am also part of the Durham Art Guild. I have a series where I collected a lot of family photos that my grandmother had from back from the 50s and 20s, and I recreated it in my art style of Afro-Surrealism. And I really have been finding myself on this journey of wanting to recreate more paintings that really record history of communities, neighborhoods, and other family moments. If anyone is in here that would like to collaborate with me, I am at Art Space majority of the time, and I would love to recreate those family photos that a lot of people have and create them as paintings, even possibly do a mural. I just really think it's important for us to engage in other creative ways to record our history, outside of just doing do not have a card with me right now.
What's your name?
My name is Delana, but you can also find me on Instagram as A Colorful Chaos. Again, I'm at Art Space majority of the time, like when it's open in the afternoons and the evenings, and on First Fridays. I'm there every First Friday. So yeah, I just wanted to say that out loud. Thank you guys.
You will take commissions?
Yes, I do take commissions, yes.
Thank you for introducing yourself and letting us know you're in the room. We really appreciate it. We've worked with Art Space in the past, so it would be nice to connect again. So we'll definitely keep you in mind.
Thank you. Make sure you call me. My question is for the panel. How do you go about connecting young people to us, the elderly people, to help bridge that divide with storytelling? Do you have any tricks of the trade that you can share?
Khadija, I'm coming to you, girl.
That's a good question. I think, I don't know if I have any tricks. I think what is difficult with young people is getting their interest, you know, like getting them to see the value and the power in it. And I think one way that I feel I've been able to do that is sharing stories of everyday people, giving them reflections, right? So when I'm talking to young people, and like especially like a lot of times we see fourth graders because that's when they're learning about North Carolina history. And so I'll talk about people who were in the past who were their age, you know, 9 or 10 years old. So I think one trick that I've used, I don't know if it's that big of a trick, but just getting them to see their reflection in history and saying, okay, well, if these people were your age, this is what they were doing, this is what they went through, this is how they felt. Really leaning into emotion sometimes when telling these stories of like, okay, well, how would you feel if this was happening to you? And then they'll respond, well, yeah, that's how they felt also. So just really getting them to see the power and their identity in this person of the past.
To add to that, I think that letting kids, teens tell stories in ways that they find interesting is one way to go about that. So I was really interested in film. I had a camera in my hand at an early age, and so I wanted to, whether it was taking pictures or videos, whatever it was, that was my way of telling stories. I like to write as well. So there are all sorts of things. You can create a website. So say, you know, a kid's interested in the digital space and things like that. Maybe they're not a big fan of reading a book. Put them on a website and let them click around and figure out. And not only are they finding a way to tell their history or learn more about their history, they are learning a skill that is going to take them far into their professional career. That's something they can put on their resume as they're going into college or beyond. So those different sort of like multimodal ways of telling stories, I think, is really enticing to kids. I was also thinking again about this era of revisionist history that we're entering. If that hasn't already just been the case in general, but you know, if we are entering this era, I remember being a kid and hearing stories in history class and then knowing what my grandma told me as well and going, those two things don't really, you know, those are two different stories. And so that, for me as a child, was very fascinating. So I found that a way that's something that drew me in to want to tell stories and learn more about my own history.
And I will say that my children, my oldest daughter, who's 30, told me how much she now hates history because she had to hear about it. But I noticed that when she is having conversations with folks her age, that's what she tells them. So yes, this is what is happening in the country today, but this is what I know to be true from my experience and from my family's experience. So don't discount them listening or having to hear the stuff that you have to say. Talk about it from the perspective of, I have been the family griot. I'm gonna pass that to you. How can you make that relevant to your life and your friends and the things that you're doing? Make it a family assignment, you know, that it could be a family event, something. I had one young lady who asked me, how do I create a time capsule for my child to make sure that they have this information. And so if you create that kind of thing, then you have a special ceremony at a certain period of time. Maybe when they turn 18 and they're going off to college, or when they're having their first child, and you have a ceremony and you say, here, this is what I have created for you. Or, leave it in your will. If you think you might pass on before they come to that period, this is to be opened at this particular time. It takes on a different type of significance, but you still keep telling the stories because they still need to be hearing them. So I see a couple of other questions back to that.
I just like to say that young people like to be entertained. They, if it's not fun, they don't want to do it. My granddaughter, Khadija, entertains us. She entertains us. She takes our family history. She's done a lot of research. She takes the family history and turns it into a game, a Jeopardy game. And we have so much fun with it. And we're never bored. In fact, we want more, more, more. Why didn't you do this? And sometimes it challenges my thinking. Because I gotta go back and she's found out stuff about my history that I didn't even know. So, but it's a game. So you gotta entertain children. If it's not fun, it's hard to keep their attention.
Thank you. Yes, definitely. I think sometimes even entertaining adults can be just from my experience being a tour coordinator and working with groups, it was very unique having students from all over across the state come to the Capitol and bring what they've learned in their classrooms to that space. And one thing that was really interesting to me was that you had students from all across the state, different backgrounds that are supposed to be on the same curriculum in a sense, different scales of learning, right? So making it that they could digest it and not be overwhelmed, but also feel seen in the space was something that was really important to me. And one thing I think for kids, if they don't see themselves in the space, they don't care about it at all. And when I came to the Capitol, there was one African-American docent, and we've never had a black governor, have we? So they didn't see that in the space. And then of course, all the busts in the space were previous white leaders. So how did I move and interact with those students? It had to be different from what it was before. So just kind of putting in that seed of what could be in this space. You could be the next governor. You could be the next secretary. You could be the next lieutenant governor. That, and even in the governor's mansion, that would kind of pique their interest. Like, what? I could be in a space like this? Yes, this is the people's house. This is for the people. So all that to say is, I think, yeah, you have to find these different ways to connect, whether it be young and old, because I would have people coming to the Capitol that went when they were a fourth grader, now they're 60 years old, and I'm telling them something they've never heard about before. And to the sense, some of them were angry, but kind of knowing that, wow, they were told something else, and now they're coming back and they're open to listening, and trying to meet them halfway was always something that was really important to me. So I know we still have time for questions, and I want to make sure everyone has a chance. Perfect, I'll be right back here.
We don't have a question, we got a comment about the obituaries. I'm not sure who said it, but that is a very important part of family research. That's how I learned a lot about my family. And over the last, I guess, 25, 30 years, I've collected about 8,000 obituaries. And I actually have the physical obituary. And the oldest person died in 54 that was born in 1854. So that means they were a slave. So I had that information, and I took all that information, I took those obituaries and I scanned them, and then I put them in a database and made them available. And so if y'all got obituaries, I would love to scan them. Oh, I'm in Harney County, by the way. But I am from, I'm almost ashamed, I'm from Zebulon, North Carolina. But I live in Harney County, and I am executive director of the Harney County African American Heritage Center.
I don't know about your basic genealogy class that's coming up.
Oh, yes, I teach genealogy classes online. And I have 2 classes actually coming up in November. I have the basic genealogy class, and I have the genealogy for Canva, using creating genealogy charts and things like that. Look me online, Desi L. Campbell, or African American Experience on Facebook.
Wow, I didn't know there was a Canva crowd.
I'm not from there, but I lived in that.
Okay.
My question is are there organizations in the state that people can donate things to so they can be preserved? Like the libraries, the colleges have collections that people can donate things to, so they'll be preserved and can be, but I don't know what they are, so is there
So, there's a few, and I know my panelists probably have a few places to start off, or I can start. Okay, so I'll start off. So me and Khadija work with the North Carolina State Department of Natural and Cultural Resources, and umbrellaed under that department is many different divisions. So one of them is our state archives. We have our state library, we have aquariums, museums. So entities that take family heirlooms would be like our state archives, our history museum, which is currently undergoing a construction project right now, so it's closed to the public. And we would be happy to connect you with individuals who do this work and connecting with community members. But there are also private institutions that as well. I always suggest to people, one, make sure that you have some type of loan contract for your piece, your family heirloom, because that is really important. Some people will kind of donate their piece without really having any type of regulation or rules on what could be done with that piece once it's an exhibit. And then they've seen an exhibit and they're like, well, that's not how I wanted that to be on display. So I always encourage people to be sure that they look over the loan contracts, and are you gonna loan it to the institution, or are you giving it to the institution as well? I think sometimes, depending on the institution, being aware of who owns it, who are their donors and their board members is really important too, as well, when you're interacting with certain institutions. But yes, I would be happy to connect you with some folks that we work with a commission that we help people to do this and preserve their family heirlooms. Unfortunately, we are a division, a small team, and we do not have the capacity to take your collections. So that's really unfortunate, but we try to connect people with folks that can. Is there anyone else in the room that has a suggestion?
I would just like to say one thing. I have been talking to the governor's crime commission task force, and I'm hearing a lot about storytelling, but we have so many youth that's incarcerated that I really would like to hear their stories, have billboards painted around them, especially to reach out to other youth. Because if our youth is not talking to our youth, and if we're only talking about the good kids, but we don't ever talk about what happened to the other kids. And that is very important, because if we look at this day and time, we are really headed to 16-year-olds, 15-year-olds having access to guns. 16-year-olds and 15-year-olds stepping up in a man's place and shooting somebody. I always, when I hear about that, I always say, what could I have done so that child wouldn't have went that way? And I know that there's many circumstances in a neighborhood or in a community to set, because you all know blacks aren't living in the inner city now. Let's be clear on that. They are being pushed out. So it really bothers me, Betty, that we need to do a better job in addressing those issues. And that's what I have been working on the Governor's Crime Commission on. Now, am I getting anywhere with it? No. The only one who support me is Colonel. But that's all right. But I'm not going to give up But I think storytelling, having those kids to tell their story, because those kids can really reach out and touch another child who may be in that same predicament to pick up a gun and kill somebody, and their life is gone. So I think that when I hear storytelling, I want to hear storytelling on the other side of the coin that's not being discussed. I would like to see more artwork centered around that, so when a young child is walking down the street, they look at it, and they look at it in a different light, because you don't know what they are engaged in. So that's one of my big concerns, is the outreach to the youth. And how do we begin to get a better handle on that? Because they are not going to change the gun control law. You can't forget that.
And another institution I was thinking about was your local libraries, kind of like, you know, we have here. So I think just depending on the community of that county library system or wherever, and if you feel like that space would be a good space for you to donate, that's another option as well. And sometimes cities too have their own kind of archive. So the city of Raleigh, I believe. The city of Raleigh?
Wake County, yeah.
I know Wake County.
Yeah.
The museum, the city of Raleigh museum as well. Oh, you wanna add more to that? Oh, I'll be back.
When it comes to accessioning things, people always want to give things to libraries. They really do. They want to give you their old books, their old textbooks, their old encyclopedias. They want to give you their old family stuff. It's, you need to look and see what you really want to give away or what you want to be saved. If you have heirlooms, old furniture, that sort of thing, look to the City of Raleigh museums. You want to go to the museums then. If you have a ancestor who specialized in dog sitting or something, dog breeding, then you want to go to a university that has an interest in that sort of thing, and you ask them if they want to house your collection. So always look to see who might be interested. For instance, the Laughing House folks would be interested in anything you had pertaining to civil rights or to protests. You know, they could maybe be interested in putting that in their archives. So always think about particularly what you want to give away, and then who might potentially be interested in what you want to give away or have displayed. Does that help?
That helps?
Yes.
Thank you. I wanted to highlight an individual that is in this room who I supremely respect, and it is you. Valencia Abbott. She is the, correct me if I'm wrong, she is the Teacher of the Year for History in the country. And she's going to be celebrated in a ceremony in New York City within the next 2 weeks.
For that, yes, I was chosen as the 2025 North Carolina History Teacher of the Year. And then in September, I found out I was the National History Teacher of the Year. And I am from Rockingham County, which most people don't know the Black history that's from our county. We have a United States Supreme Court case there. And before I started the research in 2018, I would say that only maybe less than 10% of the people knew about it. So finding Black history, elevating, but on top of all of that is that we have 2 historical markers based on the research that I did, that my students did. One was from the African American Heritage Commission with the Civil Rights Trail marker, and then we have a highway historical marker. So when you talk about saving and preserving history, it's there. It will permanently be there. Thank you.
And just to mention, the North Carolina Civil Rights Marker Program is currently on pause with the commission, but we are going to continue to move that forward. So if you're interested in that, please be on the lookout and be part of our newsletter. We do have a sign-up sheet over there too. I just want to mention that.
Good afternoon. My name is Veronica James. I'm the current president of the African American Quilt Circle in Durham. We've been in Durham almost 30 years now, and I want to connect with you, Ms. Carmen, and my artist back there who's doing, I'll connect with you. But in the vein of storytelling, save your family's quilts. They're not rags. They're not things to be thrown away or used as paint, tarp, or any of that. And those quilts tell a story. If you have an old quilt from your grandmother, save it, photograph it, document it. She'll tell you why she made it, what she used in it. That's part of your legacy and history as well. So we will be at the North Carolina Museum of History for their, on January 31st, for their African American celebration. So stop by our table, talk to us. We love to talk about quilts. We love to share our stories, and we will have our current raffle quilt up, tickets for sale there. So we welcome you to come. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. And yes, quilts tell stories. A lot of them have actually been connected to the Underground Railroad and pathways. So you just never know what these pieces hold. But we do have room for one more question, so I'm going to pass it on. I think I saw a hand over here.
When I came, I thought everybody would be talking about Raleigh, which is great, but I'm just wondering if there's anybody here in genealogy that has any connection to either Carteret or Craven, or can help me find some. And I'll tell you why. I was doing research on a canal and was over at the state archives and found 6 months worth of pay records for the enslaved laborers, and it has their names and the names of the people who enslaved them. And they're putting the canal on the National Register, and I really am desperately trying to find a group down in Craven and Carteret who can help see if there's a descendant community, so when this gets on the National Register, that group of people is invited and honored when it gets put on the National Register. So if anyone has connections in Carteret or Craven in a descendants community or a genealogical, I'd really appreciate it. So thank you.
And her name is Mary Ruffin.
Mary Ruffin.
You can grab me, I promise.
All right. Well, everyone, I think. Do we have time for one more? Okay.
I just want to make a quick announcement. Thank you. My name is Betty Murchison. I'm a member of the Wake County Community Remembrance Coalition, and we have a pilgrimage down to Montgomery, Alabama, December 5th and 6th, to the Equal Justice Initiative Museum, and we tour the sculpture garden and the park and the museum. And we will welcome anyone who'd like to go. We catch a flight to Alabama, and then we rent vans to drive to, we catch a flight to Atlanta, and then we get vans to drive to Montgomery. And we have processing time for people afterwards. We're gonna stay in the EJI Museum. They have their own hotel now. And we welcome it. You can go to waketruth.org, and there are details there. Wake, as in Wake County, truth.org, and there are details. Thank you.
You say December 5th?
5th and 6th, yes.
Well, everyone, I want to be respectful to everyone's time. I know it's a Sunday afternoon, and you all took time to just come speak with us and be part of this conversation. I want to thank my panelists, Khadija, Carmen, and Lydia, on their own. And thank you all for coming today. And then Daniel, thank for this wonderful program. We will be staying for a little bit, so please feel free to come to our tables here on the side. As Daniel mentioned before, there are books that can be checked out. So if you're interested in it, please go look at them. I have some copies of these books and they're truly amazing. Thank you all for your time.
How you doing? Hey, how you doing?
I'm talking about old way back then.
And this is my mother. Yeah.
I am.
Yeah. All of them. Oh, yeah, we related. Yes, please. That way. Yeah.
That good book?
Yes. I'm right next to them. Because look at that, my great-grandmother, she's a devastating basketball but she's originally let me look at these students. Listen, I don't know. The only one that I know came out like Rocky Mountain that day sounds amazing. I knew the McCoys and the McLeods, and my uncle really did things. John made a claim, and all them children about him did it. Yeah, I know about the book. We trying to figure him out. Troy Stewart is what I'm talking about. Way back. Troy Stewart was married to a Millie McNair. So Millie is my relative. I do. I know somebody. I don't know.
And when I was trying to talk about that,
I don't know off the top of my head. I got a whole bunch of students. Jill Stewart, Dennis Stewart, these students married Stewart. Yeah, give me a second. Let me
I didn't know about like the state inspection and I thought I didn't know. I've heard about college now. I didn't know.
man in Hillary School.
Yeah,
Your name? This is church where a lot of my family went to church. What's up, sir? How are you? Great. I know my ex. Yeah, but
I go back and have I'll have this on because I'm
oh yeah, of course.
John